Jai Jai Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Gaurnitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. Thank you. Okay, today we are reading from verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, verses 41 and 42, because there's no purport. So I'll just read verse 41, and then we can recite verse 42 together. Tam naradaha priyatamo riktadanam anuvrataha Shushrusha manaha shilena prashrayena dhamena cha. This is verse 41. Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness and sense control. Okay, verse 42. Mayam vivideshan vishnur Maya Shesha Mahamunihi Mahabhagavato Rajan Pitaram Parayutashayat Mayam Vidivishan Vishnu Maya Shesha Mahamunihi Mahabhagavato Rajan Pitaram Parayutayashat Mayam Vividishwan Vishnu Maya Shesha Mahamunihi Mahabhagavato Rajan Pitaram Parayutayashat Mayam, energies, Vividivishan, desiring to know, Vishnuhu, of the personality of Godhead, Maya Ishasya, of the master of all energies, Mahamunihi, the great sage, Mahabhagavataha, the first-class devotee of the Lord, Rajan, O King, Pitaram, unto his father, Pariyato Shayat, very much pleased. translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies. For Narada was the greatest of all sages and the greatest of all devotees, O king. Lord Brahma, being the creator of all living beings in the universe, is originally the father of several well-known sons, like Daksha, the Chatussanas, and Narada. In 3 departments of human knowledge disseminated by the Vedas, namely fruitive work, karma kanda, transcendental knowledge, jnana kanda, and devotional service, upasana kanda. Deva Rishi Narada inherited from his father Brahma devotional service, whereas Daksha inherited from his father fruitive work, and Sanaka, Sanatana, etc. inherited from their father information about Jnana-kanda, or transcendental knowledge. But out of them all, Narada is described here as the most beloved son of Brahma, because of good behavior, obedience, meekness, and a readiness to render service unto the Father. And Narada is famous as the greatest of all sages because of his being the greatest of all devotees. Narada is the spiritual master of many famous devotees of the Lord. He is the spiritual master of Prahlad, Dhruva, and Vyasa, down to the forest animal hunter, Kirata. His only business is to turn everyone to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, all these features of Narada make him the dearmost son of his father, and all this is due to Narada's being a first-class devotee of the Lord. The devotees are always anxious to know more and more about the Supreme Lord, the Master of all energies. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10.9, Machita madgata pranaha bodhayanta parashparam katayantascha mam nityam dushanti cha ramanti cha. The Supreme Lord is unlimited, and his energies are also unlimited. No one can know them completely. Brahmaji, being the greatest living entity within this universe, and being directly instructed by the Lord, must know more than anyone within this universe, although such knowledge may not be complete. Thus, it is the duty of everyone to ask about the unlimited Lord from the spiritual master in the disciplic succession of Brahma, which descends from Narada to Vyasa, from Vyasa to Sukadeva Goswami, and so on. Okay, so I'll ask for all the blessings for all the senior Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavas that are gathered here today, so that I can be a medium for the divine knowledge of Bhagavatam to shine through. Okay, so I'll just read the verse again so that we can know what we're... Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly following the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness, and sense control. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies. For Narada was the greatest of all sages and greatest of all devotees, O king. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadadi Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhiriyat. Shanvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hirtyanantustihi Bhadrani Vidunoti Suratsatam. Nashte Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Yotam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Okay, so the title of this chapter is Answering by Citing the Lord's Version. So this chapter has been focusing on answering the very many questions that Maharaja Parikshit had asked Sukadeva Goswami in chapter 8. He asked many questions, like a small child may do when they're very excited, when they've learned about a topic that's very interesting, just one question after another. He was very enthusiastic. So he wanted to know about the Transcendental Lord, and he wanted to know about Narada Muni's preaching exploits. So he asked many questions, and you can categorize them into about 10. He asked about the Lord and the Jiva, like for example, how does a spirit soul get a body? You know, the kind of question that we all ask when we first come to Krishna consciousness is like, why am I here? Why am I in this body? Why have I got it? He asked, you know, is the Lord's body different to Brahma's, or is it the same? He asked about Karna Dakshaya Vishnu, that where is he, where does he lie, where can I see him? He also asked about time and karma, that how long are the cycles of time between creation and destruction. He asked about the relativity of time within the universe and the different planets. He asks about the various different planets and who their inhabitants are and what they're like, what are their habits, what do they look like. He even asks about the different dimensions of the universe, like what is its size, how far does it expand. He asks about the various avatars that come during different yugas and their purpose, like why do they come, what do they look like, what are the exchanges that are there with the devotees. He also asks, how is the subtle body destroyed? What's the destination of a yogi? And then he also asks about, he says, tell me about the Pasandis, which are the infidels. So the definition of that is given here is, an infidel is someone who has turned away from God. He also asks about the conclusion of all the Vedas, the Upavedas, the Itihasas and Puranas. So you can see he asks loads of questions, you know, that we I think a lot of us have. So we're very fortunate that he asked these questions, because he asked these questions, it gives you answers to so many of the theological aspects and philosophical aspects that we may ask when we're on a spiritual journey. And he's very enthusiastic, and he's asking very intelligent questions, which are actually beneficial for all of us. Sometimes there can be questions there that you think, okay, what's the purpose? What does it achieve? But these questions are actually beneficial for everyone. So he's the medium through which we have all of this knowledge, and it helps us understand the big questions of life that we may have been asking. They're asked by society today, and it's even asked by the scientists, and they're still researching and trying to come to the conclusions. But we're very fortunate that we have the whole knowledge here in the Bhagavatam and in the Puranas. And this knowledge is apurashaya, meaning it's not man-made. There's no fault to it, and it's not incomplete. It has everything that's required. And then his final thing that he says, so he asks all these questions, and the final thing he says is, he's like, you know, and tell me more. Maybe there's questions I haven't asked, or maybe questions that I haven't thought about. Can you please tell me about those things as well, in case I've forgotten anything? And he says to Sukadeva Goswami, I am surrendered to you. So we see that very similarly in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjun surrenders to Krishna. He says, look, I'm so confused. I don't know what my duty is. I'm surrendering onto you. Please guide me. But he does it in a mood of anxiety, and he wants someone to surrender to. But here, Parikshit Maharaj's mood is very different. He's also very surrendered. By now, it's Canto 2, he's got rid of that fear that he has that he's going to die in 7 days. In the beginning, there's some anxiety there, but having heard some of the things that are covered in Canto 1 and at the beginning of Canto 2, he then becomes very relaxed and calm and more on a transcendental platform. So he's asking in the mood of like, okay, he wants to hear the nectarian gatha of all the transcendental knowledge that is flowing from the mouth of Sukadeva Goswami. So there's different ways in which we can surrender. We may have different moods. Some may be a mood of desperation, some may be a mood of inquisitiveness or enthusiasm. So Parikshit Maharaj here is asking the mood of, wanting to let the nectar flow from Sukadeva Goswami. He recognizes he's somebody who has a lot of knowledge and who can, see him to the end and give him all of the knowledge that's required. Okay, so when we look at Canto at the beginning of chapter 9, we hear that the Bhagavatam's first spoken by the Lord himself. So, Brahma's finished his austerities that he's done for tens of thousands of years. He appears into the world, Brahma does originally, but he doesn't know where he is. He's on a lotus flower, it's dark all around him. He doesn't know what he's doing. He tries to, find his source. He can't find the source. He hears the word tapa and he does lots of tapasya. Then after that, he's given a vision of the Lord. The Lord reveals the spiritual world to him and he reveals himself. And we hear wonderful descriptions of the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, what the Vasis look like, what goes on there earlier on in the chapter. So I definitely recommend going back and reading it, the descriptions. Because sometimes the spiritual world can just be like this abstract thing that's far away and we may not fully understand the intricacies of it. So it gives nice descriptions of the residents there and even the airplanes, what the airplanes look like. And we hear that they're also alive. They're not like dead matter. They're alive, they've got feelings and they're decorated so beautifully. So Brahma asks Krishna some questions and we hear the entire Bhagavatam in 4 verses. So I'm sure we've studied it at length when those verses were covered. And so this is actually one of my favorite chapters because of the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. I find it amazing that obviously Krishna is the Supreme Lord, everything he does is amazing, but that so much knowledge and philosophy can be packed into 4 verses so beautifully. So I'm going to ask you, what is the first verse that Krishna speaks? Like, what does he say in that first verse, the essence of it? So if you know the verse, you can recite it for us as well. Wonderful, thank you. So Krishna, I think there's a lot of times where maybe when we're still learning the knowledge, we hear Lord Ram comes down and Lord Krishna comes down, but we wonder, okay, who did everyone worship before Krishna came down? Like, what was going on? Or maybe it was Lord Ram. But what happened before Lord Ram came? And then you understand that actually that's just the Lord appearing in the material world. The Lord's there eternally in the spiritual world. So that's all going on. And then the universes are created, they come and go. So the Lord says, I'm there all the time. Before anything's created, I'm there while creation is going on, and I'm there after everything is wound up as well. Then there's the second verse. Does anybody want to say what the second verse is? It's testing your shloka memory, especially those people who are doing Bhakti Vaibhav. It's your shloka test. Anyone? Don't be shy. Yeah. Yeah, Wonderful. So he says that if there's something that exists that is not related to me, in relation to me, then that's just Maya. So basically, it doesn't add anything or add any value to your life. It's there for a little while and then it will disappear. So he's really giving the essence here of when we're trying to perform bhakti, that, is this connected to Krishna? Then it's wonderful and it's transcendental. If not, then it's just leading me down the garden path. It's not really going to get me anywhere. Okay, and the third verse. Nice and loud so everyone can hear.
All the elements are simultaneously entered into and not entered into all the elements.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, the gist of it is that, I'm there inside of everything. I'm the all-pervading energy, and I'm outside of it as well. I exist outside, so they both are there. Okay, and then does anyone want to brave the final tongue twister verse? Go on. Go on, probably you can. You can do it. Wonderful. Well read. Thank you. So, one who's searching for the absolute truth, one who's inquisitive, must perform bhakti, must perform loving devotional service, and be very determined in the process of which they're doing that. And only by doing this are we able to overcome bondage, pride, and lethargy. So so that's the gist of the verses. So Krishna kind of just sums it up in 4 verses, and he's like, okay, I'm done. All the knowledge is there. But because we're here in Kali Yuga, we can't always necessarily get that full message. We can't always grasp that full message. So it needs to be broken down for us. So if we go back to today's verses, we hear that the Lord's given Brahma these verses and the essence, and this is where the parampara is established. So where it starts off with. And the parampara being the disciplic succession, that somebody's got the knowledge and they give that full knowledge to a qualified person, to the next person, to the next person, like that. And that's how that knowledge gets passed down. And very fortunately, that's why we've got it today intact, fully bona fide, without any deviation. So Brahma establishes the parampara. That's the parampara we're in. We're in the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya, and we've received that knowledge through Brahma. So Brahma's very, we may hear some of his dodgy things that he does, but actually he's very respectable to us. Before I started reading the Bhagavatam, I didn't really think very highly of Brahma, being in my ignorance. But reading the Bhagavatam really helped me see him in a different light and have a lot of appreciation for him, and kind of within myself thinking, we shouldn't have this fault-finding mentality just because of 1 or 2 things, mistakes he may have made, that we kind of just not understand all the rest of the wonderful character that he's got. And also just those things may have been done to set an example for everybody else of the things that we shouldn't do. So, and that happens a lot in the Bhagavatam. There'll be a lot of, very elevated devotees that might do something seemingly unfortunate, but actually it's just there to teach us a lesson, for us to learn, okay, these things can happen, so let's move forward, learn the lesson, move forward, and, move onwards. So Brahma establishes the parampara by passing on this knowledge to a suitable candidate, which is the verses that we're reading today, and that suitable candidate is Narada Muni. Okay, so we hear about Narada Muni's qualification to receive this knowledge. And one of the first things that's said is that he's always ready to serve his father. So, he says that, so Brahma says to him, I've given you the knowledge. He passes that knowledge on to Narada Muni, and he says, okay, I've given you the knowledge, and now it's up to you to expand this knowledge and pass it on to everybody else. And we know that Narada Muni goes on and he gives that knowledge to Vyasadeva. This verse also explains that Narada Muni is one of the most dear sons of Brahma. So Brahma has many sons, which will get covered in Canto 3. So Brahma has sons from his mind, from his body, from his heart, all the variety of different species that there are here. They come from Brahma. Well, they originate from Brahma. Krishna gives a seed, and then when they're in the material world, Brahma takes care and brings them into the world. So you have personalities like Daksha, who's a Prajapati, meaning that he's a progenitor. He has his responsibility is to increase the population of the universe. We've got Atri, we've got Brigu, we've got the Manus, the first Manu, which is Swayambhuva Manu, the 4 Kumaras, and so on. There's many, many sons that he has. But Brahma chooses to give this knowledge of devotional service to Narada Muni. And he gives a different section to Daksha. He gives the section that deals with karma kanda, fruitive work. So that's why in the Bhagavatam we'll hear like many yagyas that Daksha's doing and different kind of pious things that he seems to be doing, because that's his responsibility. That's the thing that he's been given to do by Brahma. And then the 4 Kumaras, they're given Jnana Kanda. Brahma has special affection for Narada Muni because of his good behavior, his obedience, his meekness, and ready to offer service. Okay, so this reminded me of like my parents. He's like, okay, how much good behavior do I have for my parents? Am I obedient to them? Am I meek? Don't know. Am I ready to offer them service? Maybe when I feel like it. So I kind of just thinking, okay, well, Narada Muni is an ideal son. How can I be an ideal child to my parents, to my elders, to my seniors? So it gives a good opportunity to kind of reflect on what are the qualities. We're currently here in Kali Yuga, so for us, our relationship with our parents might be very, very different to what Narada Muni's is. But that doesn't mean we can't aspire for it, And that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness, that starting to practice the process, maybe if these qualities don't come naturally to us, they will gradually be embedded in us. So Brahma also understood that he had a great responsibility in the position of secondary creator. So he had to pass on this knowledge that Krishna has given to the world of pasandis, because that's why we're here in this material world. We've turned our backs towards Krishna. For some reason we've, turned away. Maybe we wanted some independence. Maybe we thought this place here was a fun place to be. So we're here. So Brahma takes that responsibility and Narada Muni that, okay, all of the fallen souls of the world, let's give them this knowledge so they have a chance to understand what is the truth and, turn back and look towards Krishna and go on our journey. He wanted someone who was a good example, and we hear in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 3, verse 21, that whatever action is performed by a great man, common man follows. Whatever standards he follows, or he sets, by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So he sees Narada Muni as having that kind of those kind of characteristics. He's a great man that common men follow, and we see throughout the Bhagavatam all of his followers that Narada Muni gathers, and that's not for name and fame, but because he exemplifies those acts. He sees Narada Muni as his successor. He refers to him as his most dear son, which is a bit dangerous in my view, because we may always ask our parents that, who's your favorite child? And the parents are like, I might have an answer to this, but it's probably better that I don't say it out loud because then the sibling rivalry will kick in. But here Brahma very boldly says, he's my favorite son because of his fine qualities. So Narada Muni wanted to know about the transcendental energies of the Lord. And we'd heard about those earlier on in Canto 2 in chapter 5. We hear how Narada Muni, we can see his characteristics. He approaches his father in a very humble and sensitive way to something that may actually get him into trouble. He sees his father doing, creating. He sees his father as a worshipful person amongst everybody. But he gets confused. He's like, I see him worshipping someone else. I see him doing tapasya. I see him kind of praying to someone. So he asked a very sensitive question that, you seem like you're the supreme to me because you seem to be in control of everything. You're self-sufficient. You seem to create this world like a spider creates a cobweb very easily, just independently creates a cobweb without any help. And then when it wants to wrap it up, it very easily does that. And you also seem to know the past, present, and the future. You seem to hold all the knowledge like a walnut in your palm. So, it just seems very significant. Like, we've seen how big the universe is. We hear about how huge the planets are. And Brahma just seems to hold it, like, very easily in the palm of his hand. And it's like, it's so simple for you. And I see this independence in you, but you do this tapasya, but is there someone more powerful than you? Okay, so he does that in a very sensitive way. And the way in which he does it, Jai Shri Radha Gokulananda ki Jai, Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki Jai, Gaurnitai ki Jai. Okay, so he asks this in a very sensitive way. His mood is submissive, and it's a wonderful chapter to say, because he could have asked it in a very offensive way. It's like, okay, listen, why is everyone worshipping you? This seems like you're worshipping someone higher. He does it in a respectful way, using very kind words that are not agitating, and not in a mood of challenging his father's authority. So we can learn a lot from this exchange in our own ways, in which we may wish to get knowledge from others. Maybe we have our confusions, but we can ask it in a very sensitive way, in a submissive way. And through this way, shiksha automatically flows through if it's there like that. And then Brahma goes on to explain that actually all of these opulences and abilities that he has actually come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He doesn't say, yeah, I'm the controller, I'm doing everything, and look at me, I'm wonderful. Yeah, she says, no, everything that I have actually comes from the Supreme Lord. So Narada's Sadachar here is Sadachar, his etiquette is exemplary. He knows how to behave with his seniors. He knows how to get knowledge. So the quality of mannerly behavior is described here. And it's important to always have. And when I talk about this doesn't mean that I have these qualities. It's something I'm also aspiring to. I'm just discussing what's there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So if you see me around and I'm not behaving mannerly, it's because, I'm also in the process. So I may be seeming to talk about it, but that doesn't mean I've adopted it completely. So Srila Prabhupada was asked this when he was on earth. He was asked that, how will we recognize who your disciples are? And he says, if you see my disciples, you'll know, because they will conduct themselves as ladies and gentlemen. So our behavior we'll try to be on our best behavior, because we each as individuals, we're ambassadors for the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. People may not even want to know what the philosophy is or what's going on, but what they do see is that you're a representative of that of the movement of Srila Prabhupada. So we hold responsibility in our actions and how we represent the movement. So Narada is appreciated for his good manners, his honor of his elders. He's also very affectionate to his juniors. We see in many accounts in the Srimad Bhagavatam how he, approaches Dhruva Maharaj with a lot of love and affection. How he works hard to protect Prahlad Maharaj, and many others as well. And when he needs to chastise, he chastises also. Like when Vyasadeva is a little bit despondent because of having written the scriptures, and he doesn't feel like, he just feels empty still inside. Narada Muni gives him a very gentle kind of chastisement, that you focus so much on karma khandi, you haven't really glorified the Lord enough. But he does it in a mood of affection and love. So he's a spiritual master to so many exalted persons, and he's a great example of that. There are many occasions actually he gets teased by the demigods because of his position, his traveling, his not having a home. But he deals with it in a very nice way. An example of meekness, so the quality, he has a quality of, the word meekness is used here. So it's the quality of humility, being patient, gentle, a mild quality of heart, where a person's willing to accept and submit to God, and also submit to an authority. Okay, so that's something in Kali Yuga that we see is very difficult. We want to be independent. We don't necessarily want to be submissive to someone or report into an authority. It may be a little bit difficult for us at times, but it's not a quality that we can't develop. Maybe at first somebody may say something to you, someone senior or someone elder, and they may be saying it in a mood of love and compassion to help you improve. And you may react originally like, oh yeah, I know, or like in some way or another. But as we hopefully develop this quality, we may just think, okay, let's just stay quiet for a little while. Maybe just, zip and listen and reflect on what's being said. And then maybe if you feel what's being said is unfair, maybe you can go up to the personality and very, still in a mood of discussion rather than challenging, be like, okay, you said this about me. I don't know if I agree with it. But I'll have a think about it and reflect and try and work on it. So this submissiveness is very important, and we see at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam that when Shaunaka Rishi is representing the audience in terms of their questions, Sutta Goswami is asked to sit on the Vyasasan, and one of the first qualities they talk about that. The reason why Sutta Goswami is qualified to sit on the Vyasasan and give the knowledge of the Bhagavatam that he just heard in the conversation between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit is that he is submissive. He has this mood of, he's humble, he's free from all vices. So he's very qualified to be in that position and give the knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so it's important to understand that Shiksha doesn't necessarily flow unless we consider ourselves subordinate to authority. So even with our spiritual masters, sometimes maybe we may become over-familiar or maybe friendly. We may engage in many conversations, and they may also become very friendly with us because they feel compassion towards us, and also they're humble as well. But it's important that we understand that not necessarily Shiksha will flow that way. If we don't have that mood of humility and actually understand, okay, you are superior to me, you have more knowledge than me, you have better qualities than me, you're transcendental, then the Shiksha doesn't necessarily flow. So it's important we check ourselves in our relationships with our seniors and with our spiritual master as well. A good example of Narada Muni being meek is when towards Canto 5, we see Narada Muni has been spending a lot of time with Priyavrata, who's the son of Swayambhuva Manu. So Swayambhuva Manu is one of the sons of Brahma, and he has 5 children and 2 sons, which Priyavrata is the eldest. And the reason why Manus have progeny is so that eventually they can hand over the responsibility of looking after the entire kingdom of the universe. But and earth as well, and but Priyavrata is very renounced. He doesn't have that mood of wanting to be a leader and look after everything. So his younger brother Uttanapad is given the throne, and then we hear about the lineage of Uttanapad and Dhruva Maharaj and all of that lineage all the way through to the Prachetas, and then the Prachetas have a son, but the son goes into meditation or austerity for many manvantaras. So Swayambhuva's like, I want to retire. I want to retire. I handed everything over, and now there's nobody to take anything over. That, what do I do? Maybe I need to call upon Priyavrata, my second son, to kind of look after things here on earth. But he's a little bit worried. He's like, Narada Muni's been preaching to my son. He's been cultivating him from such a young age to be brahmachari, to be celibate, and he's kind of encouraging him towards renunciation, that I don't think I can approach him while Narada Muni is there. So he goes and asks Brahma, he goes and speaks to Brahma, I'm in this, I'm a little bit in a dilemma that I feel like I've done my duty here on earth and I want to renounce, but there's nobody suitable to look after the earth. And he says and your son has been preaching to my son, so he's just so renounced that he won't listen to me. How will I go there and speak over Narada Muni maybe he'll listen to you, he's your son. So then Brahma's like, okay, let's go together. So Brahma and Swayambhuva Manu, they go together to Gandhamanda mountain, and Brahma starts speaking to Priyavrata about importance of Grahastha ashram, looking after the earth, the responsibilities, and like Priyavrata's like, what? This is like against everything that my spiritual master has taught me. And Narada Muni is there also, but he's very meek. He doesn't stand up and say, look, what are you doing? I've been cultivating this boy for a long time. He belongs to me. I see him going towards sannyas. Like I've been, and those of us who like are Bhakti Vriksha leaders, we're like, oh, I've been working so hard. You're taking my person that I've been working so hard away from me, But he doesn't say anything. He just very meekly says, okay, well, my father is saying that this is what's best for Priyavrata to do. So he just submits. He doesn't challenge his father at all. And anyway, we hear about Priyavrata going on, and he's reluctant to listen to the order of his father, but he doesn't refuse. So he's like, okay, he thinks that I don't know if this is something that I want to do, but my father is asking me, and it's something that I have to do. Not just my father, but also Brahma also as well. So this beautiful quality of meekness is there. Narada Muni also has sense control. So there's Leela that I've heard in a class before. I'm not sure which scripture it's from. But Narada Muni has no tinge of lust and pride, and he wants to enter Krishna's pastimes, his eightfold pastimes that happen during the day. So he approaches Lord Shiva for some advice that I want to enter into the pastimes of Krishna. What can I do? He bathes in Narad Kund, which is there in Vrindavan, and as Narad Muni comes out, he comes as Narad Gopi, and he engages in leelas with Krishna. And then when he's finished, he enters into Narad Kund again and comes out as Narad Muni. But he's not able to do that just because he's just anybody. It's because he's in control of his senses. There's no way that someone who is not in control of their senses that can enter the leelas or the pastimes with Krishna, especially the Gopi pastimes and the Rasa Leela pastimes. So, he gives the example of being, he sets the example of being in control of his senses too. He's very eager to hear Krishna Katha. And this is a great quality of devotees, that the thirst remains to hear more and more. They're not satiated. And we see that in our parampara throughout all the acharyas that are there. They're very thirsty for more and more knowledge. They want to drink the nectar through their ears, the nectar of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is what leads to these 4 verses being expanded into 18,000 verses. So, Narada Muni asks questions to Brahma from the 4 verses that are given, and then you'll hear in the next few verses and the next chapter that how these 4 verses actually get expanded into the 10 topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's nice to know these 10 topics, and it's nice to learn that verse as well, because all the Puranas that are there, there's 18 major Puranas and 18 minor ones, that 5 of the topics are covered in all of the Puranas. Because you may think, okay, 18,000 verses, how am I going to get through this in my lifetime? Let alone read all the rest of the Puranas that are there. But if we can understand the 10 topics, we get the general idea of the topics that are covered in the different Puranas, but they're covered on different levels, in different levels of description in each of them. So the verse goes, Atra sarga visargascha stanam poshanam uttayaha manvandre ishanu katha nirodho muktirashrayaha. So these are the 10 topics. So what are the 10 topics, do we know? So starting off with topic number 1, Sarga, which is primary creation. That's done by Lord Vishnu. Sometimes we have this misconception that, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, we've got the 3 things, and Brahma's a creator. But actually, if we look a little bit deeper, we can see, if we read the Puranas, that before Brahma comes and does creation, he needs the ingredients to do everything. Like we hear that Brahma puts everything together, but where do the ingredients come from? So we understand from the Puranas that actually those ingredients come from Lord Vishnu. He creates everything, all of the ingredients, and Brahma just comes and puts everything together. I always use the example of like a car manufacturer. You know, you'll need some steel, you'll need some rubber, you'll need some cloth for the seats, and then, you know, the car manufacturer just puts everything together and then you have your car. So that's the second topic, which is Visarga, the secondary creation that's done by Brahma. And then the third topic is Sthanam, which is cosmology, the maintenance of the universe. Where is everything? You know, how many planets are there? How big are they? Is there life there? Is there not? So that's actually a fascinating canto of the Bhagavatam, fifth canto. Then there is the fourth topic, which is Bhoshanam, which is how the Lord protects his devotees in different circumstances. Wonderful. Then there is Uttayaha, which is what? Impetus, or our inclination. Why are some people inclined to be sinful? Why are some people inclined to do good things? So the reasons behind that. What's the cause of all of this different behaviors that are there? Great. So we're doing really well. Sixth topic. Manvantara, yes, Manvantara, which is the Manus. How the Manus come into power, look after the earth, how they deliver Sanatana Dharma during all the different periods of time. When there's like waters of annihilation, sometimes the knowledge gets lost, but the Manus come and they re-establish that knowledge. Then we have Ishanugata, yes, which is what? In English? Yeah, Krishna Katha, wonderful, Krishna Katha. Yeah, avatar. So all the different avatars that come, and we know there's more than 10. Like 10 Das avatar is very popular, but there's more than 10. There's as many avatars as there are waves in the ocean, but the 10 are prominent that we hear quite a lot. And their interactions with devotees. Then we hear about Nirodha, destruction, or the winding up of creation. You know, there's always this obsession with some that, you know, how's the world going to end? When's it happening? And by now we've had like loads of predictions. Oh, the world ends in 2022, and we're still here waiting in 2023. That okay, where's this destruction? But actually, the Bhagavatam says, you know, that destruction isn't coming just yet. We've got a whole few cycles to go before destruction happens. Then we've got the ninth topic, which is mukti, liberation. How do I get out of the cycle of birth and death? And then we have the final topic, which is Ashrayaha, which is the supreme shelter. So that goes deeper than liberation, right? Liberation is just like a side effect of practicing bhakti. So we don't focus that much on mukti or becoming free from the cycle of birth and death. We take shelter of the Supreme Lord, and by doing that, liberation automatically happens. Okay, so I see that we're kind of out of time. Yeah. So just a few other things. So Narada Muni is a great devotee of Krishna. He's also a great guru. He's a great philosopher. Like, we've got all of our deity worship instructions from him. That's all there. And, you know, he sets a good etiquette for how to study the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in these two verses, we've heard about the wonderful qualities of Narada Muni, and we hear that this knowledge, or the individuals in our parampara, are not just ordinary personalities. They're highly transcendental, and we must try and, if we haven't got faith, try and develop faith that this knowledge we're receiving today is not something that's just made up, that's just whimsical or just speculation. It's actually very carefully been passed down to us. So we don't just let a mango fall from a tree when it's ripe. Somebody takes it off and very carefully passes it to the next person, because otherwise it'll just fall on the ground and the juice will just splatter everywhere, and you're like, all the good stuff's gone into the ground. So we pass this mango on very carefully. So this knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam is passed down, and Narada Muni, takes responsibility for passing it down. He gives all of that knowledge to Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva compiles it all down for us in the scriptures. So this knowledge hasn't just been around since Vyasadeva. It was there before in the spoken form, but it was written down for us in Kali Yuga. Those of you that have Kali Yuga brains, we hear something and we forget, so we get an opportunity to read it again and again. Yeah, so it's important to ask good questions, like Narada Muni does again and again. And then, Parikshit Maharaj is asks those questions again, and that's how we hear the knowledge, and that's how we get access to the nectar of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll hand over if there are any comments, questions, additions, corrections from anyone. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, just a quick question. So when Narada Muni's seeing Brahma and seeing that he's doing all the creation and stuff, and then I think he comes to the conclusion, correct me if I'm wrong, that he is the personality of Godhead because he's the greatest person that he's seen. But before that, for Narada Muni to become Narada Muni, he gets, in his journey in the material world, he gets Krishna revealed to him in the heart. And so Krishna comes and says, I'm going to disappear now, but you'll see me after. So he knows that Krishna is there, and he's kind of got a glimpse of Krishna. So how can you think that Brahma is a supreme personality of Godhead?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. So my understanding of that is that, like Arjun is a pure devotee, he's a pure devotee, he has all the knowledge, but Krishna temporarily puts him in an illusion so that divine message of the Bhagavad Gita can be given to us. And we can, he puts himself in a position of a mundane individual who doesn't understand the philosophy. And then, Krishna explains it to him. Then he's like, yeah, but still I don't understand. Explain to me further. So Narada Muni, my understanding is that Narada Muni takes that position. So even though he knows about Krishna, he's Krishna's great devotee, he has his exchange with his father, with Brahma, to, one, set the example of how to ask questions, set the example of behavior, but also so that knowledge can get passed down to us. Because, it's like a drama, right? They're acting out, so that we can also understand things in that way. So that's how I understand, unless anybody, knows something else. Is that okay? Would anyone like to add anything to that? That was a question.
Hare Krishna. So this is a separate question. What's the sociological sort of reason in Kali Yuga that we're so finding it so hard to be meek and humble in our character? Why is it? I mean, there are some obvious ones. We can say the leadership is always corrupt, so therefore we don't trust that anymore. But is there a deeper explanation that can trace back to a root cause?
Okay, so I'll try and answer that according to what I understand. So at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described that this particular age is just very polluted, and it's according to our karma that we're actually born during this time, because we've got free will, so we all desire things in different ways. Like when we cook, we may put certain spices in and stuff because that's how we like it done. So we're here in Kali Yuga during this time because, that's what we've desired, or this is where we've ended up. But the quality of age is like the quality of the air is dependent on the pollution that we're surrounded by. We can't get away from it. So Kali Yuga has these qualities. So it's described at the beginning that we're unlucky, we're misguided, we're always disturbed, we're less intelligent during this time. So these qualities are there for, during this period of time. So that's why the leadership is corrupt, and that's also why we find it hard to be submissive and all these kind of things. And because we're not submissive, we don't see the authority of scripture. We vote these nonsense leaders into power. So it's like, what came first, So, yeah. Thank you. Any others? Yes, Prayojan Pro.
It seems an interesting aspect is the humility that we have to a quality of humility. It's an interesting aspect, like when you're out either in the material world or in the material existence and a job or something like that, and or that we're in spiritual life. It seems that the aspect of authority they may seem like an idiot, or that they're wrong, and that they're corrupt or something. But the thing is, we also have to accept that if we've got a boss that seems like an idiot, we still have to obey him. Because that's our law. He's there, and we take the position that authority, whoever it is, that we should always obey. And then see what happens. There's always divine providence, and that we must accept that as well, to show itself that we don't have to worry. You know, a spiritual master, I remember Gaur Govinda Swami says, look, even if your spiritual master is doing all sorts of nonsense, you still have to obey him, but you'll always be protected. You don't have to worry. That actually, because you're following authority, and that you're doing something wrong under the authority, or seemingly wrong, no, you'll always be protected. Krishna sees that you find yourself in a difficult position. So somehow or other, just carry on and have that faith in divine providence that something good will come out of it, that you will learn something. But not only that you are always protected. The Lord, your divine protector at all occasions, your best friend in all circumstances. And actually there's all that thing, that accepting the reactions of our past misdeeds, that actually there's some things that we can't see, and that somehow we're being put into difficulties, and we wonder why. But actually you know it's to develop a sort of a side to us of humility that we have to accept, and that is the best, actually, you know, Trinadapi Sunicena. Somehow we have to get to grips with that wonderful verse. So that's all I can think, that things will happen, and you'll always be protected. The Lord is always there.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, on that note, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.